particularly taken with the words that you used when you were describing the practice of Ajahn Sumedho and Ajahn Virendamo. You used the words the discipline and the perseverance and the dedication that they had. I'm wondering how, well, but also we can really cultivate that strength of will, of determination and dedication in our practice. Have you got any easy tips for us? Thank you.
Well, yeah, thanks for the question. You know, we always begin where we are. And so you can just ask yourself, you know, how is my practice going? Is there anything that I could do or do more consistently? It seems to be, and of course I don't know your situation, but it's a regular reflection, almost complaint among people that they don't meditate enough, or they try to meditate, or they like to meditate. They think they should meditate once a day or twice a week or something, and I don't always get to it. And so one way to engage with discipline and the qualities that you just mentioned is to make determinations which you can keep. Or, you know, within a fairly high degree of certainty. You know, okay, I've meditated half an hour every morning, sometimes for a week or more, 10 days in a row, and then it slides, and I have a night out, or I see a movie, and then I can't get up in the morning. And, you know, so we have that sort of thing. So I'm going to resolve to and you can give yourself a time. You can say for the next month, okay, for the month of June, from, okay, it's the 3rd today, so until the 3rd of July, I'm going to meditate my, whatever your time of meditation is each day. I'm going to do it regular. That's one way of doing it. And certainly, I mean, I always think too, since I'm assuming even the most diligent of you go to bed and sleep at some time, then there's a period, maybe when you're just lying down to go to sleep, when you're relaxed. Hopefully you're relaxed, otherwise you aren't going to go to sleep, you're calm. And that also can be a time, maybe even if it's just 10 minutes, for, let's say, the cultivation of loving kindness, you know, and just resolve to do that too. So before you know it, you may have inserted into your life 2 periods of practice. They can be lengthened, and certainly that, you know, I said 30 minutes, I guess, in the morning. Some people I know have been doing an hour. I know a woman in Calgary, known her for 40 years. She's been meditating, I think, 2 hours a day for all of that time. You know, she just, for whatever reason, she had that kind of ability. She didn't have children, I have to say, but she's had that ability to resolve in that kind of way. And I don't know, maybe she misses the occasional late. I actually don't know, but she's very inspiring in that sense. Anyway, so making determinations is one way of doing it, certainly, and it doesn't have to just involve a meditation practice. Sometimes when I give talks, I like to reflect on the value of I don't know, one of our lists, maybe. Let's say the precepts. Let's say right speech. Okay, what does right speech mean to you? And as you reflect on a day, speaking with whoever, your mother, your mother-in-law, your husband, your dog, your co-workers, whatever. But are there times that you say things that you later regret? And can you reflect on what the kind of conditions, the preconditions for that might have been? And can you make a determination to sort of see those preconditions a little early, so that you don't say something a little bit impatient, or a little bit critical, or a little bit gossipy, or something like that? Yeah. So we can use things like precepts too, but it helps. You know, I know you all have fridges, so I always think of, you know, sticking lists on fridges. But we need to be reminded. We need to remind ourselves of what these little lists, these terms, these precepts are. So remind yourself of them regularly, and just, this is part of a practice too. So twice a day, remind yourself, okay, yeah, what am I working on this week or this month? Oh, right speech. Okay, how have I been doing today? Yeah, pretty good. And in fact, that chat I had with so and so, sometimes, we don't kind of hit it off, but I found the right tone of some patience and some kindness there, and that was really actually quite good. So well done me, So choose a moment. You can take 30 seconds or a minute, but choose a moment, maybe once a day, maybe before you start your meal at noon, and before you begin your evening dinner. Just choose a moment to reflect a little bit. How's my speech? How's my speech been lately? Yeah, it's been okay, except there was that one time when I told that kind of uncomfortable joke, and there was no real purpose to it, or I gossiped a little bit about a mutual friend, and it wasn't as kind as it could be, and I can do better. And whatever, you just be gentle with yourself and be honest with yourself. So that's just another example. These kinds of dedications in the midst of life, they up the ante for mindfulness. What is mindfulness? Sati is in part memory. You're reminding yourself of what you're doing. You're reminding yourself of where your practice resides. You're reminding yourself to be actively reflective on the events of your day, your moods, your states of mind, your words, your actions, and so forth. So there are no limits to how dedication and discipline and patience and persistence and can be applied. And as we all know, these aren't the only qualities that make Lumpur Samedo or Lumpur Virdama what they are, of course, nor any person, yourself included, that we might admire. But part of making a practice is making it ours, and making it ours regular. It's one of the great features of monastic life that basically it's, we're getting talks of this kind every day, and we're being reminded by one of our wise friends of this regularly. But you too have Dhamma talks available now, old ones on Zoom, favorite books. You've got digital books that you can download for free, and so there are any number of ways that you can that work for your personality, your own disposition. There are any number of ways that you can apply to just keep all of these things fresh. Yeah. So do it, whatever it is, do these things regularly. You don't have to sit for 4 hours at a time. You don't have to take 2 days a week in a private retreat in your apartment and, quit your job in order to, you don't have to do anything radical like that. Just find ways to insert it. And then life will lead you in a proper direction. And sometimes bigger changes will eventually seem quite natural and necessary, but that's not now. Now is just, for the next 2 weeks, I'm going to make sure I sit those 30 minutes every morning, and remember to remind yourself that I'm doing it, and isn't that good? Self-respect and just a bit of joy, and it's working. It's working. So isn't there some principle of habit formation that, what is it? If you do something for 40 days, at 40 days straight, it becomes quite naturally a kind of habit. One of you may have read some recent study on this, but I remember hearing years and years ago from a woman who every year she manned one of those man, woman, whatever, you know, she she worked in a fire lookout. You know, this is in Alberta, so she had a lot of time on her hand, but it has to be quite disciplined. I mean, they have a regular schedule to observe, and very, you know, it's professional observations required. But anyway, this was something that she had discovered, apparently, that if you resolve to do something and then just do it every day for, and it was I think she said a month, actually, it becomes a habit quite normally, naturally. So we're working with minds which are they're habit-making devices. That's a very crude way of describing our beautiful minds, but and we're, without us knowing it, we're in the habit of often making bad habits or trying to undo bad habits we didn't know we were making in the first place since we were children. And but in fact, we can actually develop good habits. This is just called practice. Do something again and again, with some care, with some mindfulness, adjustments wherever you need it, but do it regularly, and that's a habit too, isn't it? But the stronger word, I guess, it's become part of our enduring, deeper practice. Oh, I haven't mentioned. About a week ago, several of us, Lumpur and Venerable Sir Mado and I, Niraso, went to see the big rafters that are being made for the Dhamma hall, and man, they're just magnificent. That hall is going to be defined. The spaces, the interior space, is just going to be defined by these magnificent pieces of wood, just crafted to within, you know, to within very close tolerances, and very beautiful. These living pieces of wood. Yeah, we were actually stunned that it's being done in a huge kind of enclosure, a kind of barn enclosure that is rented for this purpose. And the men in there, you know, they'll be on it. They'll be doing this for a few months. There's a lot of work. They're huge things. They have a big machine to turn the things over, and yeah, it's quite a process. And the man in charge is very skilled. So we're really looking forward to it, because Sir Mado tells me that when actually they come here, of course, they're going to be all cut. Everything is, and they just put it together like a puzzle, like a, you know, one of those child's puzzles. And so it'll just take maybe a couple of days in the final reckoning. But that's nothing quite so interesting as watching people who really know what they're doing do what they really know what they're doing. And it's quite a lot of fun. We all, I think everybody enjoys competence, you know, being around competence, listening to someone speak who's just very articulate, poetic, or whatever, listening to a singer or a musician or whatever, who's just very competent. And that level of skill is available in everything, of course, including in meditation, but that becomes a little more subtle to discern. Some of the great monks that I've had the pleasure of meeting and being around a bit, you sort of feel that they have true abiding competence in their meditative life, and then it spills over into the rest of their life. So they're, you know, Lumpur Liam is famous for being just completely unflappable, present to the moment, appropriate, doing what is needed, saying what is needed, and just being completely unflappable. And that's a product of a life. And that's
Monique, can you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes.
Thank you.
You mentioned that Ajahn Sumedho had, when he first went to Thailand, he struggled with the mosquitoes, he struggled with the insects, he struggled with language. It's the time of year where we have so many mosquitoes here how did he overcome that? And how, like, I know that we're not supposed to kill the mosquitoes, but it is so hard not to. As in, I don't know, like how do you?
Well, mosquitoes in Thailand seem to be a little bit more specific about dawn and dusk. So that's one thing. You kind of avoid those periods a little bit, as much as you can. And you may know that monks in Thailand use what are called glots, mosquito nets. So they will, in their kuti, in their little kuti, it might be very, very small. Maybe they'll put a cord across the room, nail it to the either end, and then they'll just drop this mosquito net. So when they sleep, they're in the net. They're pretty fussy about how they do that. And when you wind it up again, you put it together and then kind of tie it in a knot so that no mosquitoes are inside the net when you do it, and that kind of thing. So they do take care as much as they can in ways like that. But yeah, I mean, maybe you're bowl washing and it's a wet area, mosquitoes are at your, also the mosquitoes are a lot, to some extent, are at the ankles. They aren't so much at the head. Something about them being at the head is a little more annoying. Plus, Canadian mosquitoes, I have to say, are more voracious and they're bigger. By and large, they're maybe twice as big. But yeah, the mosquito season is long in Thailand. But it's just endurance. It's just the way it is. There they are, one day after another. And at a certain point, when you're working with something disagreeable, and if it's been disagreeable for a long time, what are your options? I can get more and more and more and more angry and impatient, or at some point you sort of let go, And I think that's what often happens in extremis, when you just can't. Oh my goodness, it's another day, and I'm going to make myself miserable again. The mosquitoes are just trying to live and so forth. So you're brushing them off and that, and you got to live with them. But in my recollection, at least, there may be parts of Thailand that are much worse. I don't know, but in my recollection, they aren't like the worst that I've seen here, which they just are in attack mode sometimes. You're walking along to the main building and they've just followed your head basically. So yeah, they have practical methods of dealing with it, but it's part of their practice. Hunger is part of the practice. If you come from a Western culture, 3 square meals a day, and you go to Thailand, and maybe you got a 5 or sometimes even 10-kilometer alms round walk to gather your food. You bring it back to the monastery. You dump it all in big containers, and people sort it out and whatnot. You wait for an hour, maybe. After you've gotten up at 3 in the morning and you meditated and you cleaned the hall and set up the mats for the meal, and then you've gone on your whatever several kilometer long walk and returned, and now you wait for a while, and then you get your choice of cold food, and then that's your food for the day. That there is no more. And especially in the old days, they were lucky if they got hot tea in the evening. The clinking of Pepsi bottles in a cooler was like a kind of riveting experience. I mean, I didn't experience things in such a Spartan manner, but it hasn't been that long since a bottle of pop in Northeast Thailand was quite a luxury. So they just learned to deal with it because they got hungry, they got discomfort sitting long hours on a hard floor. Sometimes it's quite chilly, Thailand, Northeast Thailand, it blows in the winter. It gets cool and it gets it's a funny place because it gets windy in the winter, and then it gets dead quiet in the summer when it's hot and humid. You know, it's it's a difficult place, but and Lumpur speaks about this kind of thing often. But what can you do? You know, the weather is the weather, and you certainly aren't going to encounter a lot of air conditioning in the kutis. So, and then you got other things, you know, lizards climbing up the wall, and slitters scat in your kuti, and watching out for snakes and so forth. But it becomes normal, I guess. That's part of the way. And without you realizing it, at some point you might reflect and, wow, you know, there's a kind of strength and dignity that's being attained almost in spite of yourself, just because you've endured it and you've watched irritation come and go, and finally been able to some degree let it go. Lumpur Samedo's books are peppered with these stories of how Lumpur Cha would test these things, would just stress a person. You know, you'd be sitting on the hard floor, waiting for the recitation of the monk's rules once every 2 weeks, and they take 45 minutes anyway. So you're sitting there 45 minutes with your hands up, and there's chanting before and that, and then maybe Lumpur Cha decides to chat about something with an old friend who's just come, and you're sitting and you're sitting and you're sitting. Lumpur Samedo talks about waiting until from 6 or 7 in the evening until about 2 in the morning. He was a chanter, so he's sitting in his seat waiting to chant, and then this friend and Lumpur Cha start to talk about water buffaloes and old fishing stories or whatever, and it goes on till something like 2 in the morning, 6 hours or more, and then Lumpur Samedo gets to chant the Patimokkha, and that kind of thing can just wear you down. I mean, you see the frustration and maybe the panic, and then it subsides, and then something else comes up. But finally, believe it or not, the mind can be peaceful because you've just given up, and that's the point. Lumpur Cha was a master at doing this. He didn't do it all the time. He was very kind and considerate and compassionate, but this was part of his way of training. So yeah, some of these monks that have come before us especially endured levels of privation and whatnot, which are less common nowadays, but they still exist, certainly.
Ajahn, Vivian has a question.
Okay, Vivian.
So Ajahn, this question has come through to me on the chat channel, and it says, Ajahn, thank you, Ajahn. Do you have any suggestions on how to use the Dharma to keep life in balance when committed to a project that involves a lot of online time and also engenders craving and then frustration?
Mm. Well, mindfulness comes to mind. That's always the easy answer, but of course it's much deeper than that. Yeah, if you're on the computer, and sometimes I find myself on the computer more than I should be, in reflection, gee, what's but if you need to be on the computer quite a bit, I'm sure there are skillful ways of doing this, or probably little timers, and set a timer for 12 minutes or 28 minutes or something, just to go ding. And then you give yourself a little task, which is what? I don't know. Close your eyes, breathe in 5 times, slowly, softly, watching the breath in and out, and see if that makes a difference. I bet it will. Just something like that. Bombarded with EMF rays and all kinds of things, but just the fact that there's this focus on the screen, and what is available on that screen, through the screen, is endlessly interesting. It's meant to be, has to be. YouTube, whatever your fancy is. Yeah? Get onto Amazon and look for a new coffee pot or something like that. Divert yourself in that kind of way. So, one way that we get a break in normal life is we divert ourselves. We give ourselves, we're tiring with one set of sensory input, text on a screen or something like that. And then we divert ourselves to another kind of sensory input, music, dog videos, whatever, So, but for that particular question, if this is, maybe your form of livelihood or something, then I would suggest something like a regular time thing, and you be religious about it. You be very disciplined and conscientious about it. When that goes every 28 minutes, maybe turn off the screen for 3 minutes, 2 minutes, whatever it takes, but watch your breath, something like that. Arrange your back a little bit. Just remember to, draw your shoulders back, straighten up your neck and all of that. Breathe in a few times and just sit. And it may only take a minute and a half. And then you see what difference it makes, because it's that kind of noticing of difference that is encouraging. You might not find it's quite enough or something. So refine it as you need to, but you're the one who will get the feedback that's needed. But that's the first thing that comes to mind, is finding a way to break that link, and in a meaningful way. And I would say the body is the place to begin, because this is all about the head, and thoughts and desires and fabrications and preoccupations and worries and time limits and all of that kind of thing. So just stopping. You might also just try to do that. You get the 28 minutes and then you stop, but you also stand to the side, do your breathing and feel the pressure on your feet, something like that. Now you're taking yourself away from it. Even if you shut the screen off, you're taking yourself away from it. All of these cues are very valuable to the mind at some level. I'm breaking the link. Now I'm in a different posture. I'm standing, watching my breath, and then feeling the pressure on my feet. There it is. Ah, yes. This is my body. This is how I live. Yeah. So try that. I need to admit that I have watched some cat videos, some dog videos, and one doesn't want to indulge in these things, but there is something very sweet about seeing some dog that's been abandoned. And we read dogs, so the relationship between humans and dogs and cats is so intimate for thousands of years. So we read emotion and fright and despair and need and all of these kinds of things in an animal like a dog. And so, yeah, it's actually quite beautiful to see this creature being well fed and cared for and loved, and then seeing how they respond. So it's, that's a way to bring. But if I was spending all day on the computer working, I wouldn't stay on the computer to watch a dog video. I don't think that wouldn't be the best thing.